Hi, Jonas and Cam. It's Auntie Sarah. You'll notice I'm sitting in the exact same place that I was when I read Chapter 3. Everything is going so well. I have some more time, so I thought I would just read you Chapter 4 on this very same day. So here for Chapter 4 is called the Selfishness Cure. And we have a picture of Mrs. Piggle dressed as a pirate talking to someone's upset mother. So let's find out what happens today. And again, I still have my guest of Charlie Brown and the Jangies over there too. Let's hope Charlie doesn't get too wild. All right. Dick Thompson was certainly a nice-looking boy. He was smart in school and behaved well at the table, but whenever his name was mentioned, people said, poor Mrs. Thompson. She has such a problem. Whatever will she do with that child? Oh, Charlie, don't bite this book. I guess that you would feel simply dreadful if people said that thing when your name was mentioned. But Dick didn't. You see, Dick Thompson was a selfish, greedy boy, and he cared more about being a selfish, greedy boy than about what people said. When children came over to his house, Dick said, "Don't touch mine. Don't touch that. That's mine. You can't play with that. That's mine. Put down my ball. Take off my skates." Each time this happened, at least each time it happened where his mother could hear Dick saying, "That's mine," she would send him up to his room to think about how selfish he was. Dick would go right upstairs, for he was very obedient, but instead of thinking about how bad it was to be selfish, he would sit on the bed and swing his legs and think, "Everything in this room is mine. Nobody's going to touch my things." He certainly was a problem. One day, Dick's mother bought a big box of peppermint sticks. She called Dick into the house and said, "Now, dear, I have bought this large box of peppermint sticks for you, but I want you to share them with your friends. There are about 50 sticks in this box, and I want you to divide them with all the children in the neighborhood. Don't forget the little children. Dick, you might send 1 or 2 to old Mrs. Bury. She is fond of peppermint." Dick said, "Thank you, Mother, for the fine candy," and then took the box out of doors and put it in the basket in the front of his bicycle, and allowed the neighborhood children to look at the peppermint sticks. But he warned them, "This is my candy, and if anyone touches it, I will hit you with my baseball bat." Wow, this kid's got an issue. The children in the neighborhood had known Dick for some time, and they knew that he meant what he said. But as they looked at the candy, they wished and wished they could have just one stick. Dick's mother, watching from the window, saw all the children gathered around Dick and then the box of candy in the basket at the front of the bicycle, and she thought to herself, "Just look at my little boy, dividing the candy with all his friends. I just knew he would learn to be generous." And she tapped on the window, and when Dick looked, she waved and smiled. Dick waved and smiled back, but unfortunately, just then, Mary O'Toole, we know her from the last chapter, who was quite a darling, reached in and grabbed a stick of candy, and crack! Dick clouted her on the hand with his baseball bat. In a flash, his mother saw what was really going on. She flew out the door, took Dick firmly by the arm, and marched him upstairs, thrust him into his room, and slammed the door. Then she went downstairs, out the front door, and took the box of candy, and told Mary O'Toole to divide it up among all the children, even the little ones, and to take 1 or 2 sticks over to Mrs. Bury, because she was fond of peppermint. There were 15 children, not counting Dick, and 50 sticks of candy, so each child was given 3 sticks, and old Mrs. Bury got 5. From the window of his bedroom, Dick watched Mary divide the candy, and he was furious. From the window of his bedroom, Dick watched Mary divide the... Oh, I just read that. After all the candy had been divided, Mrs. Thompson went into the house and called Dick's father. She said, Herbert, I know that you are busy and you don't like me to call you at the office, but I'm so worried about Dick. Dick's father said, "What's the matter? Is he sick?" Dick's mother said, "No, but I just wish he were here. I just wish he were here. It would be much more simpler." Mrs. Thompson said, "Now, dear, I'm very busy. Perhaps you'd better wait until I come home." Mrs. Thompson said, "Herbert, this cannot wait one more minute." She told him about the candy and the baseball bat. Mr. Thompson said, "Why don't you give him a good hard spanking?" There's a lot of spanking in this book. It's a very old-fashioned book in many ways. I'll tell him that you're going to give him something that he can keep all himself. Ha ha ha. Now, Herbert, it's not a laughing matter. I don't think that spanking will solve a thing. I just don't know what to do and which way to turn," said Mrs. Thompson. She began to cry, partly because she felt so humiliated over Dick's selfishness, and partly because she knew that crying was one way to get action out of Dick's father. Wowzers, what a message. Usually we find that speaking to one another is a better way to handle that. Dick's father said, "Now, dear, tears won't help. Let me see. Shall I hop into a taxi and come home and thrash Dick?" Dick's mother only cried louder. Dick's father said, I know. Just call. I know what to do. Call Mrs. Wriggle Squiggle, or whatever her name is. You know, the one that cured Hubert Pretense." "You mean Mrs. Piggle? Oh, dear. Oh, Herbert, you are wonderful. I knew you would think of something. I'll call her right away." Mrs. Thompson blew her nose and cheered up. Mothers always do cheer up when they think of Mrs. Piggle, because she knows so much about children. After all, she has had about 1,000 little boys and girls come to her house and pull taffy and play checkers and bake cookies and drink cambric tea and dig for pirate gold buried in her backyard. And so she has plenty of opportunity to learn about childish ailments and cures for them. She was certainly the person to ask about Dick, the selfish boy, so Mrs. Thompson telephoned her and said, "Hello, Mrs. Piggle? This is Mrs. Thompson, Dick's mother." Mrs. Piggle said, "Hello, Mrs. Thompson. I rather expected you to call." Mrs. Thompson said, "You have? Why?" "Because I know Dick very well," said Mrs. Piggle, "and that although he is a dear boy and the most well-mannered child who comes to visit me, never once forgetting to say please and thank you, he is very selfish." "Oh, I know he is, said Mrs. Thompson, almost crying, because she was so ashamed that Mrs. Piggle should know how selfish Dick was. Mrs. Piggle said, "Now, Mrs. Thompson, do not feel sad, selfish, or greediness. Do not feel sad. Selfishness and greediness are just diseases like the measles or chicken pox that can be cured very easily. But we must start now, before another day passes. Because Dick is such a nice little boy, we want everyone to like him as we do." "Oh, do you like him in spite of his selfishness?" asked Dick's mother. "Of course I do," said Mrs. Piggle. "I love all children, but it distresses me when I see a child who has a disease like selfishness or answer-backism or won't put away toys. His parents don't do a thing to cure him." "I want to cure Dick," said his mother. "I will do anything to cure him." Mrs. Piggle said, "The selfishness cure is really simple, but the rules must be followed very strictly. You will have to come down here and get my selfishness kit. At the same time, I will give you the directions for its use." "Thank you very much, dear Mrs. Piggle," said Mrs. Thompson. "I will leave right now." And she hung up the phone and slipped on a jacket and ran all the way to Mrs. Piggle's house. When she arrived, Mrs. Piggle was on the front porch waiting for her. On the porch beside her was quite a large green metal box with "Selfishness Kit" printed on the side in white letters. Mrs. Piggle invited Dick's mother in and to sit down, and then she opened the kit. Inside, there were about 25 padlocks of various sizes. There were great big ones, the size of apples, down to teeny tiny ones, no bigger than a penny. There were also screws and screwdrivers, and a box of labels that said Dick, a box of blank gummed labels, and a small can of white paint, and a small can of black paint, and a small paintbrush, and a pasty bag with its large, this is a large bag with a nozzle on the end, and when filled with frosting, can squeeze the frosting out, and it comes out the end like a a pastry bag. Silly auntie. That can come out and form words. So you have a bag, and one end has a little tip on it, and you put frosting in it, and then you can squeeze it for decorating cakes. Maybe you've seen your mama do that, or someone else. Mrs. Piggle said, "Mrs. Thompson, these padlocks are for Dick's drawers, his closets, his chest, his bicycle, his bedroom door, his nightstand drawer, his toothbrush. As soon as you get home, put the padlocks on everything he owns and give him the keys. This is to assure him that he and he alone can touch his things. The name labels are to be sewn on all his clothes, and the gum stickers are to be put on all his books. Even his school books, notebooks, pencils are to be pasted on his ruler, crayons, and paints. On each sticker, print with large letters in black paint, Dick's books don't touch, Dick's notebooks don't touch, and so forth. On every toy he owns, you must paint in either black or white paint. Dick's toys don't touch, Dick's bat don't touch, Dick's soccer ball don't touch. Put the name of the toy first, and then don't touch. The pastry bag is to be filled with a simple white frosting used to mark Dick's sandwiches, his fruit, his cookies, and his plate for each. Did you hear that? A little baby squeak from this guy. For each meal. And that's all there is to it. I would expect you'll be returning the selfishness kit before the week has passed. Mrs. Thompson said, "Oh, I do hope so, Mrs. Piggle. Are you sure it will work?" "It has cured hundreds of children. I don't see any reason why it should not cure Dick. A week or even less, I should say." Mrs. Thompson thanked Mrs. Piggle. "What's wrong, baby? You're squeaking. You're squeaking, little boy." Mrs. Thompson thanked Mrs. Piggle very much, and lugging the kit, she walked home. As soon as she had hung up her jacket, she began sewing labels into all of Dick's clothes. That's a lot of work for the mama. He asked her what she was doing, and when she showed him, he was happy. "Boy, this will just show people who owns my clothes," he said proudly. Mrs. Thompson did not answer, but continued to put the label on each and every stitch of his clothing. "Do you want to get down, little boy? Your time up here is done. You're going to go bug Jangy for a little bit." Then she opened the kit and took out the tiniest padlock, and she fastened Dick's toothbrush to the toothbrush rack with a tiny padlock and snapped it shut, handing the key, which was not much bigger than a pin, to Dick. "You'd better find a ring to hold your keys. You're going to have about 25 of them." "Boy, that's just wonderful," Dick said, fondling the tiny key and thinking, "That's my toothbrush, and now nobody but me can touch it." He was very happy. When dinner time came, Mrs. Thompson closed the selfishness kit and took it downstairs to show Dick's father. She told him about Mrs. Piggle and he patted her on the back and said that he was sure everything was going to be all right. And after dinner, they went upstairs to put some of the padlocks on, and were surprised to find that Dick himself had already put the locks on each of his bureau drawers, his nightstand drawer, his toy box, his closet door, his bedroom door, and he had put stickers on the covers of all of his books, notebooks, coloring books, crayons, colored pencil boxes, stamp album. On one sticker he had printed in the back, in black paint, that puppy, "Dick's books don't touch, Dick's notebooks don't touch, Dick's crayons don't touch, Dick's pencil box don't touch, Dick's stamp album don't touch." He was very proud and asked his father if he didn't think he printed well. His father said, "You should be able to print well. You certainly have practiced enough." And he looked disgustedly around the room at the stickers, which labeled everything. Dick's brush don't touch. Dick's comb don't touch. Dick's window blind don't touch. He turned to Dick's mother and said, perhaps we should wear stickers. Dick's mother don't touch. Dick's father don't touch. I'll bet he'll wear a monogrammed underwear when he grows up, Mrs. Thompson said. Oh, I hope not, Herbert. Dick said, come on, Mom and Dad, let's mark all the rest of my stuff. And so they worked until 8:30, marking Dick's bicycle, his baseball, his bat, his pitcher's glove, his catcher's glove, his toolbox, his roller skates, his lunchbox, his rubber boots, his raincoat, his Indian suit, his soldier suit, his gun, and his wagon. They even painted Dick's dog don't touch over Rover's collar. When they had finished and it was time for Dick to go to bed, he kissed his mother and said good night to his father and went happily upstairs, his ring of keys jingling from his belt. Mrs. Thompson sank down into a chair in the living room. Mr. Thompson sank down and said, I trust that Mrs. Pigglewiggle knows what she's doing. Because if this cure should not work, our son Dick is going to be the most loathsome boy in the whole world. The next morning, they heard Dick clicking and snapping all the padlocks long before they were up. He was a little late coming downstairs because it took time to padlock all his drawers and his closet door and the door of his room. But he was very happy, and his mother noticed that he had pinned one of the name tags on the outside of his sweater. While he was eating breakfast, he marked Dick's breakfast don't touch. His mother marked his sandwiches. Dick's sandwiches don't touch, and his apple. Dick's apple don't touch, and his cookies. Dick's cookies don't touch. His lunchbox had already been marked with Dick's lunchbox don't touch. After breakfast, Dick put the lunchbox in the basket on his bicycle and noticed proudly the large sign hanging from the crossbar. Dick's bicycle, do not touch. At school, the children paid little attention to the sign on the bicycle. When he opened up his lunchbox and took out his sandwiches marked Dick's sandwiches, and the apple marked Dick's apple don't touch, and the cookies marked Dick's cookies don't touch. Everyone laughed and wanted to see them. In the resulting crowding and pushing, one of the sandwiches dropped and stepped on. Some of the big boys grabbed the apple and tossed it into the air above Dick's head, shouting, "Throw me Dick's apple! Oh, look, I dropped Dick's apple. I wonder if Dick's apple will bounce." When they finally gave Dick his apple, it was bruised and dirty. In the arithmetic period that afternoon, Bobby Slater, across the aisle from Dick, asked for Dick's ruler, and when he saw the label, "Hey, little puppy, come here. What are you eating?" Dick's ruler don't touch, he began to laugh and reached over and snatched the ruler off the desk and passed it to Kenny Hatch, who laughed and passed it to the girl in front of him, and finally Miss Crabtree had to come down and get it. When she saw the sign on it, she laughed too, but she gave the ruler back to Dick. After school, the boys decided to play baseball in the vacant lot by Dick's house. But when Dick brought out his baseball and bat and mitts, and the boys saw Dick's baseball don't touch, Dick's bat don't touch, they said, "We can't touch anything, so let's go home." And they did. The dogs are getting wild. Hopefully they won't knock over the computer. Dick went up to his room to play, but he found that somewhere during the day he had lost the key to his closet, and that he had locked the key to the toy chest, that he had locked the key to his toy chest in the chest. So when he went down and sat on the front porch and listened to the shouts of children playing in Hubert Pretent's yard. The next morning at school during recess, nobody would play with him, and the little girls followed him around and laughed. When they marched into school, the children pointed and laughed, and Mrs. Crabtree came down to see what the trouble was. She was almost about to laugh herself when she saw the sign someone had pinned on Dick's back. "This is Dick, don't touch." At lunchtime, the children crowded around to watch him take out a sandwich, and one little girl said, He's so selfish and greedy. His sandwiches are marked, so he can't share them. Here they are. Here's the picture for the chapter. Can you read the writing on there? It says Dick Sandwich. Everyone's making fun of him. The children danced around him and chanted, Dick's sandwich, don't touch. Dick's apple, don't touch. Dick's lunchbox, don't touch. Finally, Dick took his lunchbox and put it in the basket of his bicycle, but the children followed him, seeing the big sign on Dick's bicycle. Dick's bicycle, don't touch, they yelled and laughed and sang. Dick's don't touch, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch. After school, Dick hurried home, and he had lost the key to his room, so he went down to the basement to play with his toolbox. But every time he saw the large white sign, Dick's toolbox, don't touch, he thought of school and the lunchbox, and he remembered how the children laughed and jeered, and he was ashamed. At dinner, when his mother brought him a plate marked Dick's dinner, don't touch, he said, why do you have to mark my plate? I don't care which one I get. Mrs. Thompson looked significantly at Mr. Thompson. All right, Dick, we won't mark your plate if you'll share your dessert with Rover. Dick thought for a few minutes, and then he carefully broke his chocolate piece into 2 equal parts and gave one to Rover, who gulped it down and looked grateful. Okay, 2 problems with that. You don't feed dogs from the table, and you certainly don't give dogs chocolate because it can be bad for them. After dinner, Dick told his father that he had lost the keys to his room in the closet, and his father took off the padlocks on those doors and on the toy box. Dick said, Don't put them back on, Dad. I don't care who goes in my room or gets into my stuff. The next morning, Dick got up early and scraped Dick's lunchbox, don't touch, off from his lunchbox and took the sign off his bicycle, and he went in to his mother. Then he went in to his mother and said, Mom, please don't mark my sandwiches. Please don't mark any of my stuff. All right, Dick. I only did it to protect you. Dick said, I don't care who gets my lunch. Just don't mark it. At noon, all the children gathered around Dick, but neither his sandwiches, nor his apple, nor his lunchbox were marked, so they rushed out to see his bicycle. But there was no sign on it. So they sat down and ate their lunches. Right after school that night, Dick hurried home and scraped the marking off his ball and bat and mitts. Then he walked up to where the children were playing baseball and tossing the ball, bats and mitts. Tossing the ball, bats and mitts down beside the catcher, he said, Do you want to use these? I don't care. And he went back to his own house. In a little while, Miss Mary O'Toole rang the doorbell and asked Mrs. Thompson if Dick could come out and play. Mrs. Thompson said he'd love to, Mary, but first he must return something to Mrs. Piggle. Mary said, Tell him to come over to the lot when he gets back, and here are some keys he lost. Mrs. Thompson said, Thank you for the keys, dear, but thank goodness they belong to Mrs. Piggle and not to Dick. They took the keys out. She took the keys of the big padlock and the tiny padlocks up to Dick's room, where he was busily packing Mrs. Piggle's selfishness kit up to take back. That is the end of chapter 4. The next chapter is called The Radish Cure, and that is my favorite. So until next time, I will see ya. Love you. Bye.